tonight. Do you have to make the statement first?
Yes, go on.
You can start now.
Right. I'd like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. Good evening, everybody. Do we have apologies for absence?
We have apologies from the Chairman, Councillor Harrison, who's got another meeting tonight.
Right, any declarations of interest?
No.
No. Okay. Right. Approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of October. Is everybody happy that those are a true reflection?
Yeah.
Thank you. Right. Item 4, verbal update on the actions from each of the subgroups and agree any recommendations to full council. Which subgroup wants to start first?
You go first, because I'm trying to remember.
What? Yeah, all my scribbled notes.
Yes, I've forgotten my thing.
Quickly start my computer up. So we had a meeting about the Community Engagement Day, and lots of discussions about what sort of things we'd be trying to do. So aims were to try and let people know what the council are doing, why there's a climate emergency, and why we'll be making changes. Also to give the community a chance to feel like they have some ownership over the changes rather than be something that's remote to them. And we'd like to reach as many people as possible. Sorry, let me just have a full set of notes. So it would be a learning opportunity about climate change and the implications of inaction. A chance for people to learn about actions they can take it in their own homes, so things like diet and changes of the way they use energy. Hopefully a chance to learn about grants and incentives which may be available. Product demonstrations by local businesses, give people a voice, chance to raise concerns and express their emotions about the climate emergency. We talked about the target audience and felt that we shouldn't really try to target people who are completely in denial about the climate emergency because it's just too difficult a job to change their minds. So the ideal target are people who are open-minded but not yet fully engaged. So people who are already acting on their own behalf then aren't the target audience. So an example question that we might put on media that was advertising would be something like, do you know enough about climate change to attract people in who feel like they want to know more but don't yet feel like they know everything about what they want to do about it. We felt it was a good idea to liaise with schools because they'll bring their parents along, because parents would obviously be a key target, aiming probably middle school upwards because the nature of the day is going to be too hard for younger children. We'll ask local businesses to come along, not expecting a huge take-up, but may follow it with an info pack for local businesses. It might be useful to have registration for the day so we know about numbers, it'll be easier for planning. We talked about venues which would include possibly St Nick's, the Legion, one of the schools, Scout Hut, depending on the idea of numbers.
Not village hall.
Yeah, there's a few venues and we can decide when we know roughly how many people are coming.
So do the village hall.
Sorry?
The council could pay for the village hall if we had it in the village hall.
Yeah.
The main hall there.
In the main hall, yeah. It'd be an ideal venue, I think. Businesses could bring a poster table or stand a table, demonstration products. There are one or two low carbon businesses in Wimborne who might like to bring products along and show how they work. So we've talked about the Totnes. They run a similar day to this, and they had what looked very well run, a mixture of talks, hands-on, community conversation. People participated in the day, so it wasn't just listening to talks. We'd like to mix up the event and so have some talks and some activities.
Yeah. We also mentioned the fact that the Totnes was a town,
Yeah.
rather, and we're a village.
Yes.
And
So
there's
we
a
have
slight
to-
difference
we
there.
have to
isn't there?
relegate our
Yeah.
ambitions,
Yeah.
but it looked inspiring, so it was a good thing to aim for, but I appreciate we won't necessarily do the same thing. So advertising ideas would be in places like the Corfe Mullen link, Broadstone link, or social media. Proposed date 16th of May 2020. So potential speakers: Low Carbon Dorset, Win on Waste. There's an organisation called Climate Outreach who participated in Totnes, and the Wimborne XR group. And I seem to have given myself 2 tasks out of the list of things and nobody else any, so my tasks were to contact
Very
Climate
good.
Outreach about the possibility of providing speakers, and to talk to the local Extinction Rebellion group about the potential to provide speakers or conversations.
Could I come in on that? At our
Sorry,
last council meeting, 3 members of the Extinction Rebellion came along just to see how well Dorset Council was getting on with what they promised, right? It was very affable, and they were very polite, but I think they were trying to G Dorset Council up. So it may be a good idea to invite one of the council officers along to one of our first meeting, really, just to keep them in the frame.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone agree yet?
What, do you mean to one of these meetings, Mike?
No,
Or to
when
the
we
community
take
engagement?
the big meeting going, that's in May. Yeah, roughly, is it? Yeah, May.
Yeah, you mentioned Win on Waste. We could also ask, do you think about asking Dorset Waste Partnership along?
Yeah.
That should be added to the list.
Yeah, because I was thinking if you're going to do it in May and you had it at Village Hall, we now own this green out here, so you could have an in and out, you could have quite a lot of stalls and things going on outside as well as inside, which give you more space. I've got a feeling there's something going on at the rec on that day,
Right.
a dog show. Is it a Saturday?
It would be, yes, I think so.
I've got a feeling there's a dog show at the rec on the 16th of May, but it might be the 23rd. So we wouldn't be able to have it at the rec.
Scalpel, yeah.
Would that affect our little day as well? If it's a dog show, you're going to have quite a few people
It
there.
might do.
Yeah.
Well, it was a proposed date, not a final
Yes, we
date.
could
Yeah,
always,
yeah.
yes.
Tweak it.
The problem with the week after that is that will then, it might be the beginning of June.
Was it half term
Half
soon? Was that the
term.
week after?
Yeah, so we could do it on the 23rd potentially.
Okay, so there's a proposed date rather than final date.
And we'll
so-
check.
Okay. And since the meeting, I've done my actions. So I've contacted Climate Outreach and discovered today that I'd spent the last few weeks in their spam folder. So that I've managed to find their phone number and speak to them today. So I've literally only just started communication with them. The difficulty is that they are a charitable company, which means they do some charitable work and some consultancy work, and whether we would fall into one of their charitable areas or not would affect the cost quite considerably, I suspect. So I'll find out more when I talk to them. The other task I had was talk to Wimborne XR. So we've had some ideas for doing not necessarily this kind of structured talks, but maybe the more joining parts of the thing where people are interacting and communicating and participating in the day. So the proposals we've got are to do some climate science in a kind of horrible histories way, so we can kind of make it visual and have objects. We've done a demo where we have things flying around and catching them in buckets to represent energy moving around, and to try and explain the basics of climate science.
Right.
And we could do something like a set of letters to the earth and make a kind of a book on the day where people write their own messages. So it's very much an emotional thing rather than a chance for them to engage. And the other idea was to make a paper chain of pledges, just for a bit of fun, something to do. I've also put feelers out in the community, and I've come across someone called Judith Proctor who runs a Facebook page called Combat Climate Change. She's a resident of Corfe Mullen, and she's offering to help people in the village to footprint their carbon.
She also organises the, I think I'm right in saying, the folk festival.
Yes, she's key.
Yeah, we know her.
Yeah.
She's one of our
Yeah.
long tenants. Isn't
Yeah, Well, she's offered to help, and she's offered to help in any way with the climate emergency. So, because she's gaining expertise quite quickly, I think, in carbon footprints, I think her expertise would be very useful. I've also come across a business called Creative Dynamo Ecotainment, who will do a solar-powered disco or film, environmental film. He's a Wimborne resident and works at the tip, and he probably wants a small amount of money for running that, but we could get him to run a kind of film on climate change and try and power it by solar or something. It'd be fun.
I think, going back to the speakers as well, in the other group you were talking about, I think the council would probably be prepared to put some budget into this day. I mean, obviously not a huge amount of money, but if you're talking about paying for a solar powered film or paying for speakers, I think we could accommodate that.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I think if we're talking fair prices, obviously not the expensive consultancy fees.
But it's only.
But it's a worthwhile cause.
Yeah, not everything would be a consultancy.
I agree.
Can I just clarify something? You seem to discount other than the middle school for input into this. Having been involved in constructing the village plan, there was a tremendous amount of enthusiasm and completion of questionnaires by the very, very young people in the village, who were very much into the sort of things that we're going to be talking about.
Okay. That was the outcome of the discussion, not my own view. I would say that if it's a good idea, but we need to have a slightly, like a different thread to the day. Because if we're doing a climate science talk and we're doing talks about how perhaps a heat pump works, we probably want to have a kind of a second area where younger people could do something more. We could run a little forest school. I actually know someone who'd run a forest school.
If they did a questionnaire beforehand, it's the sort of thing that would get them involved in
So you
thinking
could
it
do
through.
something outside.
Yeah. My wife's a forest school leader, so that's a possibility. She could do something. Okay. But I did think it would have to be a separate thread.
Okay.
Just to clarify that, are we talking about middle or first at the moment? First school and middle school?
We talked about it being middle school, sort of 10 to 12 upwards. We thought we were just trying to focus our minds on what the target audience would be, and we felt that younger than that. It's just a guess, isn't it?
Well, we analysed all the questionnaires. My wife did anyway. We analysed all the questionnaires, and the interest in this type of thing is immense at that level, and I think it's something.
Yeah, no, it's a good idea. In fact, we should run some kind of event in parallel so that the parents can cross over and the younger people can get outside. And, it's a good idea, I think. Okay, so other ideas, I'll just quickly go through the ideas. None of them are finalised or anything. So I've spoken to Climate Outreach, but I only just started to. I've come across someone who makes environmental films, who I proposed the idea of making a kind of living histories film, where people who wanted to would, on the day, get a chance to spend 1 minute in front of the camera saying what they feel about climate change. It would be like a snapshot of community opinion. But I haven't had any feedback yet from them about the idea. So water and waste is an obvious one, and we've just mentioned Dorset Waste Partnership. There's a repair cafe, isn't there, now in Wimborne? That would be a good thing to have a table, or because I think this is perfect idea. Let's not throw away all our clothes and repair them. And then the other thing I thought would be something like the Low Carbon Energy Centre in Wimborne, but there must be other businesses who could bring a heat pump and tell us how it works.
That'd be a good idea.
No,
the kids would be really interested in something like that.
Yeah.
Really,
Yeah, that's right. So that's as far as I've got.
One of the people up at Camp Hill is involved in the repair shop, not as a big star, but she's there in the background, and she has been involved.
That's the one in the learning resource centre.
The one that's on television at the moment.
Ah, okay, that one, right.
Yeah.
It's a new one in Wimborne, you see.
Yeah, well, she's actually on the one that's on BBC television. Not as a top star, but she's a... And that poster with knobs on, should we say.
Right.
It just
Cleveland
highlighted.
Frim, they have sort of like a tool store where people come and get tools, because if you only use the tool once or twice, no.
Yeah, that's right.
Things like menu sheds where they repair things and make things.
Yeah, and I think anything like that's got to be a good idea, because it's about showing people the positive side to the change as well as the negative side.
Yeah.
It'd be fun.
So
Okay.
where do you want to go from here then?
Well,
What's the next stage?
from my perspective, I'd appreciate some assistance in searching out potential businesses or people who could be involved. Obviously, we need to finalise the date, and I think with that, the venue, and some idea if there is any budget available, to know just a rough idea of what the total budget should be.
Do we need any more subgroup meetings?
So we've got a
Pursue
full
that.
council meeting on the 10th of December. I could ask them about budget. Do you have anything in mind? I mean, if we had it at the village hall, we could either pay for the hire charge or absorb the cost. We can do something with that.
I'm guessing that most of the things we want to do will be free. People like Judith and myself, the XR people would have a bit for free.
Dorset West Park should be free.
Yeah, I have made contact with the Low Carbon Dorset people as well at the council meeting, but I didn't hear back to my email when I followed it up the day after, so I need to chase that one as well.
I think everybody's contacting them at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's it, yeah. But they have provided people to come out to talk at similar events. Sorry, there was one other thing, is on that meeting when I went to the Dorset Council, Low Carbon Dorset Climate Emergency Planning meeting, I met some people from Charmouth Council who are planning something similar in early spring. So I got as far as saying we mustn't do this in isolation, share your ideas and we'll share ours. Hopefully that will come to fruition soon, but again it's waiting for things to kick off, isn't it?
You find the Dorset Council?
The most interesting thing was actually the tension between the parish and town councils and the Dorset Council. That was the thing that was clear, was that we were given a very good message about what needs to be done, and a lot of it is around planning. What parish councils need to be doing, face all your houses to the south and make sure they've got solar panels on the roof. And all the parish councils sat there and said, we'd like to, but you did the planning. So there was a tension there, which was quite interesting.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Interesting, right? Okay.
Well, I can look at dates, because I think once we get that fixed.
I think that's really good next step, actually, because
Yeah.
we can start to
So
tie it down.
I'll do that and liaise with you on that.
Yeah. Okay.
And then if I don't mind liaising with you on a list of people to contact, or if you want me to find out some different businesses. I mean, are there people like who can come? Like I'm thinking about real nappies and all that sort of thing. We have a few stalls out here or something like that. Don't know.
Weather should be a bit better by then.
Yeah.
It's going to be sunny. Whatever day it's going to be sunny. I will order the weather.
Right.
That weather thing is about climate change, isn't it?
Yeah.
The weather patterns are changing. So if in fact we did have to let it down, it may make people think twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we should all point out that that's weather, not climate.
Exactly. Oh, glory, yeah. I was just thinking, I mean, I used to teach in middle school, right? In fact, I was the head of a middle school. And it seems to me that there are two sorts. There's the 8 to 12 and the 9 to 13, right?
Yeah.
The two different sorts. 9-year-olds are coming up to, you know, scratch on understanding things, I think.
Yeah.
Whereas 8-year-olds probably aren't quite there, if you know what I mean. So, I mean, you know, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
Yeah.
I don't know how old those. How old were the scouts yesterday?
Oh, they'd be
15.
yeah,
They were pretty
teens,
good.
aren't they?
Yeah,
It's not older.
absolute magic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In some ways, I suspect that the people of that age range would already have done a fair amount of climate science at school.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
That's what I understand. So I'm really hoping that parents watch.
Hopefully they're just as involved.
Yeah, and the other thing is that I've been looking in the papers recently, and I noticed, is it Jet to Go or something? One of the airlines can now people can pay money, extra money, to offset the carbon emissions. How does that work?
So, whilst we're in this situation that a large proportion of the world is still producing lots of carbon dioxide, and there are lots of easy opportunities for reducing it a bit, like planting trees or switching people to LED lights. Yeah. If you fly to America and it produces 1.5 tons of CO2, you just need to pay for that many LED bulbs and stick it in some developing country somewhere to replace their filament tubes or something like that. There are all sorts of projects, plant trees, you know, install solar somewhere, just contribute to a solar project to the same amount of carbon dioxide that you would have emitted on your flight. But it's not, first of all, that's not a permanent solution, because once you get to the point where we're more or less carbon neutral, there won't be any of these projects left. And secondly, you're still injecting carbon dioxide up into the atmosphere. It's not ideal. No, I think I wouldn't say it's not beneficial, but it's not the solution. You know, everything's not
very popular.
It eases people's conscience.
Yeah, I keep getting the thing on my petrol app, you know, that I'm carbon neutral on filling up my petrol.
You've had a very good, very good meeting there.
Yeah,
You've achieved
covered quite a lot. Yeah.
Can I ask you as well, Katrina, do you know when Easter is next year? Because that will give us some idea of when Whit's going to be and the half-term holidays.
I can tell you when the half-term holiday is.
Yeah, come on.
It's either the 23rd or the 30th.
Yes, I've got a funny feeling the 23rd might be the beginning of the half-term, in which case it wouldn't be a good time to do it. Here we go.
Is that good or not?
Well, it's just that some people go away, don't they? That's the thing.
Oh, that's true.
People do. But there again, people come down to this part of the world as well.
True, that's true.
Yeah.
Easter is 6th of April to the 17th of April. Summer half term is Monday the 25th, yeah.
Right. Okay.
So,
Think of the date.
I think there was a programme on the BBC on Monday night about meat eating and all turning vegan.
Yeah,
That was interesting, I found.
yeah, that's quite an easy.
But I was thinking, as we're in the farming area, about having children playing with animals and get to know the animals, farm animals, maybe a bit more. Because the idea was that if we know where our food's coming from, we'll be a bit more responsible how we...
Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting idea, whether it works or not.
You just bring a farm into the field.
No.
Yeah.
No, perhaps the farmer at Lamb's Grave could bring some sheep up.
Though they may feel there's a conflict. Because I
Yeah.
think one of the messages that goes with carbon neutrality is that at least meat has to be a treat rather than a regular part of our diet. I'm not saying everyone should go vegan. Yeah, I mean, I would argue we really need to stop the mass production rather than the local businesses.
Yeah, the other thing is children handling animals.
With
You have to be
insurance.
very careful that they don't get an infection. So you have to
Did you see in the paper? I don't know if you get the paper that I do. I normally get the Eye, right, and it had photographs of pigs in the the Alps, etc. And the photographs were taken at the turn of the last century, 1900, and it showed you the same scene today.
I've seen similar things.
And the glaciers had disappeared.
Mm.
You know, there was a little stream trickling down in one of them. And I think things like that do duping
Yeah.
people's.
Victoria Falls, I don't know if you saw that.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
so
terrible.
yeah.
Yeah, shocking.
Yeah,
isn't it?
the petrol retailer I use has become the first retailer to offset the carbon dioxide emissions from customers' fuel purposes at its UK service stations at no extra cost. So that's why. It's a bit like the flight thing.
Which
Yeah.
company is that, sorry? There are other suppliers of
Other petrol
fuel.
stations are
Of course.
available.
We'll look out for those.
So what do we need to do for the next meeting?
I think we should coordinate on a list of the potential speakers and collaborators, and if you'll help organise the date.
Businesses.
Business, yeah.
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 What about the schools as well? Can we start hitting the schools? Say, you know, how's about it?
I think once we've got a date,
Yeah.
Right, Katrina, yeah.
we can almost do a safe
Confirmed
date.
visit.
But I have no contacts into the local schools because my children have both gone elsewhere in counties, so
Oh right.
both special needs.
My grandkids, they attend the local schools, so you know it gives me an in.
Yeah.
Right, you know.
Yeah.
So you're happy to do that?
Yeah. Well, I can go to Ruskin and have a word with them when we know the date.
Yeah.
And as an ex-Ofsted inspector, they'll probably take notice of it. Yeah.
They'll panic when they see you. But I mean, if a school wanted to participate and provide some activity, you know,
Well, yeah,
kids might like to
will.
put on a display of some kind or a little show, you know, it'd be great.
Like the children have done,
And personally,
You'd
I
be
think,
amazed what kids can do,
Yeah.
seriously.
what I don't want to do is run a day that's 5 hour long talks, you know,
No.
you want to have a little bit of this and a little bit of different things. So people-
Participation.
That naturalist who lives down, is it Weirham Road, Wimborne Road, just off.
Yes, I know who you mean.
A few miles.
Hugh, yeah,
Mm.
he does things in the BBC.
Yeah.
There are otters down in the woods down
I think we've got to be careful to focus on what the day is. We don't want to go too much down the environmental side. Do you know what I mean? I know there's tree planting and so on, but we need to keep it as a climate emergency, really.
A lot of places have declared a climate and ecological emergency.
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah.
But I still agree that there are lots of things about, you know, the ecosystem. There has not yet been very much about how do we change our lifestyles because of the climate emergency. So even if we were to change our declaration to climate and ecological emergency, which I think is a good idea, I still think this day is mostly about the climate emergency.
I mean, it doesn't preclude us from having, some input from
But
organisations.
but focused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so by the next meeting, whatever the date is, I will have gone into Ruskin and had a chat, right, and I'll come back with some information about if they're going to partake and if they are what, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Freshman, what about the middle school?
Well, I know I can get
I
into
can do
Ruskin.
Lockyers if you like, because I've got
What do you-
I can do Lockyers.
Yeah, right.
And I can do Henbury, I've got the contacts at Henbury.
Yeah, you were at Henbury recently. weren't
I was at Henbury recently, so we're not doing Caulfields.
slightly outside the boundary, but does that matter?
No, because the children
Children,
coming from here. Yeah.
Well, I don't
I
see
suggest that at least half the students there are from this area.
Exactly, yeah. I don't see why not.
So if you do rush, come on do the others if you like.
Right, you're
okay?
on, right.
But the first task will be to set the date and
Yes, we need to do that. So when we've sorted that out, I'll go in, right?
Yeah,
If I come out alive, I'll be.
yeah. And we can start, once we've got a date, we can start to
Yeah.
formalise things.
Right. I'll say a few words about ours then, which was we had a discussion about what we thought the parish council could do itself, which was what our official title was actions to parish council into elections to lower carbon footprint. So we had a discussion about things that we thought we could do. However, since low carbon Dorset was going to provide some tools in order to do that, and we really needed that to do it sensibly rather than reinventing the wheel ourselves. And having looked through that today, it looks as though it's quite useful. It might be quite hard work because there's a lot in it, depending on how deep you go. I did try putting a few figures in as a trial, which was interesting, but it was in two parts really, what the parish council could do and what the community could do. And it was very useful in pointing out which were the easy win options. I was surprised at how much carbon is produced by vehicles and travel and also heating, whereas electricity usage was relatively low at the moment anyway in producing carbon, which having listened to adverts on the radio every 15 minutes thanking people for having new smart meters, and this is why they bother at the moment. But I think there are other reasons there, because if everybody had an electric car, then there wouldn't be sufficient electricity available at the moment to charge them all. So we probably need to do several things in parallel. And the other thing that was interesting was the use of gas at the moment. They're talking, one suggestion was that everybody got rid of their gas boilers over the next 10 years or so, or maybe longer, and change to heat pumps or electric heating. There's a suggestion in what we got from the low carbon Dorset that we could, if the government was so inclined, they would encourage the use of the production of hydrogen and putting that into the gas distribution system, since that can be produced either chemically or electrically. But what will happen there is one of the unknowns. So there's options for lobbying there. But I think our next now we've got the spreadsheets, we can now start to use those spreadsheets, and that's probably where we go from here.
Yeah.
So
good idea.
So we weren't in a position really to achieve as much as you've done.
No, I mean we did identify various things that we could look at.
Which was confirmed by what was in there, everything from waste production to water usage, which isn't immediately obvious, as well as how the council's vehicles are propelled. And the next thing we do is to get electrical. We've already been through changing quite a lot of the lights to LEDs, and there were some other options opportunities that we identified, and also to look at perhaps buying some land to put a solar farm on.
Good idea.
Was the suggestion of low carbon Dorset
Yeah.
was that parish councils would put a 2 acre solar
I think
PV
that
farm.
would be
There's
one of the best things we could
Two
do.
down at Lynchburg,
Might get some,
either side of the main
Right.
A31.
you might get some objections from people because it's not a view of the countryside. The other thing is wind power.
Oh, yes. But can I say, when I was going around schools in Devon, some of the smaller schools in rural areas had solar panels and a little wind,
I think that's good as an example, but you really need a big one.
Yeah.
Well, they used to power the schools and used to send it, they used to make out of it because they were sending electricity into the national grid as well. Seriously.
Yeah.
I met an installer recently by chance, sat next to him in a pub, and he was telling me that small scale wind installations are becoming much more viable.
Yeah.
I don't know how much you're just trying to sell me one.
When Albert Dorset suggested that they had to be
Yes, I
big
heard the
ones.
same. Yeah.
Is that when he said viable, do you mean the costs were coming down or they were becoming more?
They get better returns.
I think he was talking about you get a lot more electricity for your money than solar PV, but even on a household sized turbine, which would obviously need a suitable site to mount it.
Yeah.
You need 3 for Corfe Mullen to supply the lot.
But that would be full size turbines.
Full size,
Yeah.
Well, not as big as the ones that they're putting up at the moment. So
No.
You were looking at,
gigantic.
things that go around are about that without light. No, say they're not the big turbines.
Yeah, that's what I mean. These are
Yeah.
sort of just a few £1,000.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The big ones on the top of the hill.
Right, no,
Spoil
can you imagine a
everybody's
small school but a big? Yeah, I can imagine.
That's what Albert Dorset was suggesting.
Might there be some opportunity to put, dare I say it, somewhere up the back?
Yeah.
Yeah, you get wind from
You certainly do.
Yeah.
Some athlete
Yeah.
running down round there.
That would be a good idea, Really.
I mean, if you could do them very discreetly.
Yeah.
Now this,
So we did come up with some ideas that the
Yeah.
Parish
Yeah.
Council could do on its sites, but we really need to do this audit first.
I think most of what we've identified were popped up in these spreadsheets, so we can carry on.
this prevailing attitude locally on wind, and the wind farm was going to be off Bournemouth, there's just so much prejudice against it, whereas you go to other parts of the country, the northwest, the northeast,
Oh, they're there.
Scotland,
Yeah.
it's,
No, I agree.
it's incredible.
And
It's just a question of attitude. Then you go to Spain, Portugal,
I'd like to
France.
see people get more prejudiced against the outcomes that will happen if they don't start doing things,
Exactly.
to be honest.
Yeah.
I think things have changed anyway. It might be worth pursuing that again.
Well, I was listening to Radio 4 and there was someone on it, and I don't know who he was, but he's supposed to be an expert on tides, etc., etc. Reckoned that the sea levels will go up between 3 feet, it was feet he was going in, and 12 feet within the next 50 years. That's
The last sort of thoroughly reviewed thing I saw said 6 feet by the turn of the century, so he's in that zone.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to predict exactly because things like the West Antarctic ice sheet hopefully will stay stable, but if it doesn't stay stable, it's something like 72 metres worth of ice in that, so we don't want that one to go.
No, I don't think so.
So it's very, very hard to predict.
Since you mentioned tidal power, there's a very fast tide race in the Poole Harbour entrance.
Yeah.
So whether something could be.
Yeah, we need to make better use of the sea. Whether Corfe Mullen Parish is the right place to start that movement, I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, we're well off with it's quite sunny here. We get
Yeah.
quite good weather. We've got plenty of wind,
Yeah,
especially up at the Wreckers.
Plenty of water at the moment.
And we've got plenty of water for tidal. So plus the oil that's under the ground, which we don't really want.
so
Gas.
Low Carbon Dorset did say the other day that things like the heating and switching away from gas, it shouldn't be your first priority, because in a few years you'll know whether we're about to switch to hydrogen, and the alternatives will be a lot cheaper. So there's kind of a case of prioritising based on what things are likely to change the most, but switching all the bulbs to LEDs is a start, isn't it? There are lots of things like that you can do right now that you're not going to be wasting money.
No. The issue that we have with these is that you have to have a new fitting.
Are they not standard tubes? Are these?
I don't know what the issue is. So when one goes and that it's got so brittle that it's not really usable, we then change it for a new one that's
Right.
ready.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I think you have to do it in
Yeah.
a stepped way, because otherwise you're just chucking things away that are perfectly, then you're creating waste, aren't you?
Yeah.
So
What are these now, Katrina? Are they?
I think these are a mixture in here.
Yeah. Well, this
That's
looks.
an LED, I think.
LED.
That's to
No, they
fluorescent.
are.
Or is it just a white light?
But in the
Yeah.
main hall, there's still, a mixture.
Right.
As you say, it's not worth throwing them away if they're
No.
perfectly
No,
okay.
that's right.
So the gain isn't
Okay.
enormous. The fluorescent's reasonably efficient anyway.
But, so when's our next meeting going to be? And I'll remember this one. Can we a penknife to actually?
Going on from what you were saying, I'm wondering if us three need to have another subgroup meeting now we've got that spreadsheet.
I think so, yes. Yeah.
Is it worth involving Judith?
In the audit.
Because
Yeah,
that's what
could
she's
do.
doing with
Yeah.
residents,
Yeah.
and she offered her help. So
Yeah. Very good, yeah.
So we want. You probably don't need another subgroup, really, do you?
I think we can offline put the ideas
Yeah.
down into a list.
But we need what I call an internal subgroup meeting. So I'll arrange that offline, if that's okay, at a mutually convenient date. Just thinking we're 27th of November.
Early January. It gets all strange,
Yeah.
around Christmas. And I probably don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if anyone else does. No?
Lots
I may
of
be going
things.
away, maybe. Yeah.
I haven't been told yet.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe something like the 20th or 21st of January. I'm just thinking, do you think that's a bit late?
It is a long time.
I don't know. It may just be me, but I wouldn't be able to suggest that I could attend anything between, say, the 15th and the 30th, basically.
You could what, so?
I probably couldn't attend any meetings, but I may be able to, but probably wouldn't be able to between the 15th and the 30th. So I may be going away.
Of January?
No, this is December. Oh, you're talking about
I'm
January?
talking about January.
Oh, it's fine, yeah, great.
That's what I was thinking. Then we can have a subgroup,
Yeah.
which may be before or after Christmas. I don't know yet. But if for any reason that was early January, then maybe a couple of weeks later have a main subcommittee. So
Yeah.
maybe go for the, I'll tell you when the hall's free. Should we fix it now? Have people got their diaries or?
Good. Hello, Bill. I'm going to write you on mine. Why not? Can I write you a pen afterwards?
Yeah.
Thank you. It's a sharper pen, isn't it? Thank you. You know, when I was a kid, a long time ago, I saw a thing called Tomorrow's World. Remember
Yeah.
Tomorrow's World?
Yeah.
And this person had invented a car which ran on either hydrogen sulfide or hydrogen sulfate. It's the H2O2,
Right.
right? It burnt one molecule of oxygen.
Right.
So what came out of the gas at the end?
Water.
H2, thank you.
Water.
Yeah, water. So whatever happened to that?
With a hydrogen-based car, there is a.
There's
You
a-
can
Yeah, but
actually
this
buy a
was-
hydrogen car.
Yeah, but this was the other one. This was the oxygen.
Yeah,
car,
We're talking about hydrogen railway
Yeah.
vehicles currently.
You can actually buy a hydrogen-based Toyota, and there are about 4 filling stations across the country. So if you plan your journey, you can
BMW
just
do one as well, or they did.
Sorry?
BMW did
Yeah,
a version
probably.
of
So you got to go RAC membership twice as many times.
So,
But that's the same as Zeppelin.
two suggested dates, the 21st or the 22nd of January. One is a Tuesday and one is a Wednesday.
I'd suggest Tuesday, because we used to.
That would be in between our two
Yeah,
council
that's right,
meetings. Tuesday the 21st?
If it's the same time, it's fine.
7 p.m.
Yeah, it's fine.
You sure?
Yeah.
Tuesday the 20.
21st January 2020 at 7 p.m.
Thank you. Yes.
So will you get in touch with
Sorry, I can't.
I'll get in touch with you.
7 o'clock. Yeah.
My friends of mine have got an electric car, they've got to leave.
Right.
And they said leave, but they said they don't have any problems getting
Filling.
charged.
Yes.
We've got
Because they've got this computer on there and it tells them where all the stations are where
Right.
they can charge up.
Yeah.
They said they've never had any problems getting to one.
I think you just have to
It's a matter of
plan it a
planning.
bit better, yeah. So we've got a plug-in hybrid, so we plug in at home, charge it overnight, and most of the time we then run it as electric at home. So, you know, if we're only driving around locally, it's an electric car. But if we then go on the motorways, it turns the engine on and becomes a petrol.
But Leafs aren't hybrids, are they?
No, ours
Yeah.
is, but that's
So
pure
I'm-
electric.
Yeah, I met someone who decided to go from here to the north, right, and knew where he was going to recharge it, okay?
Yeah.
At some service station. He got there and it was out of order,
Yeah.
seriously.
Yeah.
So he had to be picked up by the REC. Yeah.
Just need
'Cause
something with
the-
an extension cable.
Yeah,
120 miles, is it? I think.
yeah, long
Depends
extension.
on which model, yes.
Yeah.
Depends whether you got the lights on and the heater on.
I was surprised how cheap they said it was. No,
Yeah.
it's a very cheap way of transport.
Yeah, well, because it's talking about smart meters. Our smart meter turns our car on at 12:30 at night, so we use all the cheap
Really?
electric. So
Yeah.
we pay
Good idea.
50p for 30 miles of electricity. If you compare that to your bill, it's only if we manage to remember to charge it at night.
Yes.
Then
It's
nobody
a
else
row
is
in the
using it.
morning, is it? You know, you forgot to charge it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it. You know our family.
Okay.
How did the marriage break down? Well, you see, it's like this, you know.
Okay, have we covered everything there?
I think so.
Can I add one thing to the thought processes for future? At some point, it would be good to set a date when the council itself is carbon neutral. Is going to aim to be carbon neutral.
Well, we put that on our
I mean, the
subcommittee.
typical thing is that people are saying 2030. We might wish to beat it, but it'd be good to say that we're at least going to
Yeah,
aim for something.
a lot of other parishes are releasing press releases about where they aim to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
right.
should do.
That's
Yeah, I
an
think.
item for the subgroup.
Yes,
Okay.
when we do.
Coal Hill
Go
comes
on.
to mind.
What year are they going for?
I can't remember.
Have they declared a year? I thought they
I
had.
thought they declared it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a lot of, like about 50% of the councils have
I
declared
think
something.
Dorset Council, I think it's 2035,
Right.
which is a bit in the future, but you know, viable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay then.
By 95.
Anything else anybody wants to?
I'll be 23. Yeah.
Anything else anybody else wants to?
No,
say?
no, no.
Okay, I declare the meeting closed.